Auzu Billah Shaitan Rajim. May God protect us from the cursed one and unnecessary ignorance. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise due to the Lord of the worlds. Rabbi Gfirli, my Lord, forgive me for all the sins I'm conscious and unconscious of. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. May God guide us to the direct path. All right. So hello everyone. Welcome to this evening's lecture. To explain to you what is motivating me to communicate now is simply a series of acknowledgments of reality that have aligned in my perception. Which means that to truly understand a concept, we must understand its context. And so before I can dive into explaining the concepts of this episode, really, talking about the concepts, I need to talk about the context where the concept is being engaged, which is important and necessary. The context is that, first of all, a human being is giving this talk. That means I am filtered by my own value system and awareness. But I, as a human being, have tried my best in these 33 years, in these 12,000 plus new days I've had on this planet. Okay? I have tried to calibrate and try to notice my own bias. So I am not giving this talk without a realization or without a consideration that, all right, I'm a small part of the world commenting on the world, which is the whole big event. And in some sense, I cannot limit reality to myself because I am a part of reality. I am not all of it, at least in front of my eyes. The context that I'm acknowledging in order for you to get a sense of like my value system and how like the speaker is talking about this stuff. First of all, I treat this world as an existential system, and I also treat this world that it has moderators and it has a system admin. Okay? And the difference between how I treat it compared to others is that I treat the system admin to have no worldly equivalent. Okay, so we're all users, members in a system, users in a system, and there are mods, and there is a system admin, and also something I forgot to mention. Another aspect to what I'm acknowledging about the context is that the existential system is simulated. In other words, humanity needs to have the ability to visualize in the future a group of like self-conscious androids are going to look at each other and be like, guys, whatever we do, we cannot ignore we're artificial. Okay? And so what I'm trying to say is very kind of intense, but it's this notion that the whole species, like there's one story they're giving you, which is like, yeah, you're human beings on Earth. And then there's another story that's going on here. And that means there's an event taking place. Consciousness is interpreting this event in many different ways, and humanity is trying to find the most accurate interpretation. For me, the most accurate interpretation is pretty much as a simulated being inside a simulated existential system to, in some sense, realize the limits of its code. Okay, and this is not something easy to do, but at some point in this life, especially as you get older, you begin to realize that the urge, the momentum you had towards the limitless, it's like children can't differentiate between their inner realms and outer realms. So whatever is possible in their inner realms is still possible in the outer realms. But as you get acquainted with the outer realms, the outer life, you begin to see that in some sense, it's not that every archetype of your own choosings in your inner life can apply to the outer life. Okay, this is important to consider. And guys, I haven't forgotten about the title. This is just context building at this point. Think of it this way. I'm still introducing you to the idea of this talk. When we look at life, going back to this notion that I'm telling you, we're in a system, we're simulated because we're temporarily here, because things had a beginning and they will have an ending. Okay? So not only yourself will have a beginning or ending, the world will have a beginning and ending, the species may have a beginning or ending, or something may happen before the ending of this life that transforms the value of the whole life. So whoever you are listening to me as a human being, I do understand that human beings are conditioned to compare the present to the past, okay? And that gives you a sense of self, but I'm that human being telling you, ladies and gentlemen of this world, you can also extract your identity from comparing your present to your future self. It hasn't been normalized, so people don't do it. Do you understand? For me, do you know, I was like, how is it that the new age community is going and the world is still, under some sort of deception, right? It made me fascinated that how could spirituality be wrong in a world that is simulated, you know? And just a second. Ultimately, what is like the main game human beings are playing, okay? And what are my values specifically as someone talking about this topic? So I acknowledge a system admin outside of the world. Like if I right now invented an invention, okay, like created an android, okay, invented an android or something, right? I am not the android. I created creation, my created, like, let's say if I draw a work of art, that work of art was in my awareness. Therefore, I was beyond it. That means before, like, think of it this way. It's like something created you before you were born, it engaged in the process. And similarly, I want you to now think what was involved in the birth of the world. Do you understand? And why is it that we're considering intelligence and time in a sort of linear arrow in the forward? And what does the future mean if time is a circle, not an arrow? See, I'm trying to build up to this point to explain to you that the context is very important, and sometimes you may want to be whatever concept, but if you're not free in the concept is enslaved. You see, in the same way, you have this idea of submission and domination in human psychology. It's not just limited to human psychology. People don't realize this, but ideas devour other ideas. Okay, it's not just the savageness is in the external realm. In the inner realm, there is. I believe it was what's the dude's name? Heidegger. I think it was Heidegger or some philosopher who brought this notion of the synthesis and the anti-synthesis, right? And he meant this sense of like, in some sense, ideas evolve to to combat each other, to then bring forth a new integration. It's not that you're in a chaotic world or you're in an ordered world. You're in a sort of sine wave. Okay, you're in a waving world, and what that means is it has, in some sense, peaks and troughs. It has chaos and order. But the thing about this world is that it's not just like a mechanism. It's not like we're inside a machine, because that's how they're treating it if you're atheist. Okay, if you're atheist, you're inside a machine, but you don't believe that anybody created the machine. Okay, and you may not even believe in creation, because that's the excuse. Like, I saw this years ago. I saw theists and atheists debate, and I saw so many different angles, like futuristic counter arguments to what they're saying. Okay, and what that means is, see, people don't want to lose, but when you look at the ideological revolution, when you look at, excuse me, the linguistic simulation, when you realize that human beings are not just standing on a physical world, every sense of them, their emotions are affiliated with a character that is standing in their meaning. Do you understand? That means when you look at an object, you know, the object doesn't have meaning. Okay, but when somebody gives you an object, suddenly it has meaning. You know, oh, it's like, this is sentimental. My father gave me this watch. I don't even like wearing like chunks of metal around my wrist. You know, but still, you know, it's a gift. You know what I mean? And so what that means is the meaning is personal. The existence of the phenomena is impersonal, is public. Okay, so you got to understand, in this life, you are a technology. You're this human technology. And you have, in some sense, an ability to notice an external layout of shape, but simultaneously interpret it as an inner landscape. Do you understand what that means? That means you're not just standing in front of your eyes in the mirror of matter. You're not just having an external life. This whole time you've been having an internal life like every one of us, and you've been having insecurities, not just based on how you feel in the outer realm. Do you understand? The mystery of reality surpasses the chaos. Do you know why? Because I would term it as this, that there's a different class of, like, there is conscious chaos and there is unconscious chaos. There is conscious order and there is unconscious order. Do you know? And you are in a world where chaos and order are in some sense in this great swordsman fight. Do you know? There was a time where I studied the different origin stories of different cultures from around the world. It's 100% in one of the talks if you listen to all of them. So there is an order that is conscious of itself, and there is an order that is not conscious of itself. And similarly, there is a chaos that is conscious of itself, and there is a chaos that is not conscious of itself. And those chaos conscious of themselves are always more innocent. They are always more innocent than consciousness. Do you know, because to be honest, consciousness, it's so bizarre. It's very hard to realize that the sin Adam and Eve committed, they became. they became their sin, which meant that it was another test. So we are like this second soul class being tested. Okay, what that means is like what our ancestors, theologically speaking, were so close to God because they were right there, created by God. You understand? That means like there is no telling of what kind of memory Adam and Eve would have if they knew of a higher place and then came to a lower place. You know, imagine you could do a backflip, but then you went in a world where it's like everybody was saying you can't do a backflip. Do you understand? You wonder about your potential. Do you know? And even in physics, what do you have? You have kinetic energy and potential energy. So that means before I move, everything's potential energy. The energy can have any potential. The moment you move, okay, it has kinetic, it took shape. It happened. Do you understand? So, anyways, all of this is leading to a point where I am trying to explain to the viewer. You know, guys, I'll say it like this. The context to this lecture is treating the human being as an advanced technology, and we're wondering about its applications, user interface, the hardware, software, and then in some sense, if the world is a system and there are elements in the system, what are the elements in the system, and how is humanity a conscious node? Because we are neither like a beast and we're neither like an angel. We're somewhere in between, and what we find in between is civilization. Do you understand? Where we are as beings right now, it's not a matter of like, yo man, I need to know the truth, and I don't know the truth. It's not a game like that, you know? So treat humanity as an advanced technology, wonder about this advanced technology, and in today's lecture, I'm bringing a case. I'm bringing a case study. Okay, what does that mean? That means I'm pointing to a situation, a scenario, and then I'm trying to ask the viewer wonder about this scenario, and it might be new for you, and there is the value. You see, because the notion is that, sure, I'm a character in a world. Okay, I go in this life like a multiplayer online 3D instead of pixels elemental video game, right? And as I function in this video game, right, I begin to have experiences of reality which constantly update and upgrade how reality means to me. So in this lecture, I will now explain to you the title. It occurred to me, that I have a desire. And some people desire to be like, I'm talking about like a hidden desire, a desire a person has an inkling of, but they don't fully know, but it's like, it's giving them power to move in the world. It's motivating them to move. And I realized that my ego, which is like the self interface I'm using to identify with reality, okay, which externally is I'm associating as my biological body, internally it's where my attention goes next, really. You know, it's not like I'm going around like, you know, treating my identity as an Iron Man suit that's just one shape all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like the most advanced Iron Man suit was none of the Iron Man suits we saw in the films. The most advanced Iron Man suit is a nanotechnology. That means Tony Stark, like even though in Endgame he had nanotechnology in regards to like his suit was becoming like liquid ultimately, how it was like assembling on him, right? And the thing is that the most advanced suit would technically be a shape-shifting suit. You understand? It would become more like a chameleon. Therefore, it would technically become an immortal suit because it's using advanced AI to adjust to every scenario with information that human beings cannot possibly, you know, keep all paralleled at the same time in their minds. So it occurred to me. So, first of all, I'm trying to tell you, I have a desire. I'm a human being too. I'm not perfect. And one of my subconscious desires was this notion, this scene that endlessly would repeat in my mind. You don't know how many talks I've given anytime this scene has occurred in my mind. It's like this film preview. And it's this film preview that I'm seeing it from first person, okay? But it's kind of like, imagine like you're walking alone in a battlefield and you're just one person, okay, and you have a sword in your hand, and in front of you there is a massive army covering the distance. And it's like this one soldier is facing this massive army, and then he raises his sword, and from the clouds the actual army comes. You see, regardless of the activity that happens in the outer realms, the true game being played on this planet is who is the most aware of it and then is playing over those values. Do you understand what I mean? That means they've conditioned the civilization to, for example, everybody wants to be a billionaire and trillionaire. Do you know what I mean? That's like the Superman. That's like, it's like back in the day, people wanted to just be, you know, you'd ask kids, hey, what do you want to be, kid? It's like astronaut, do you know? And now you ask kids, what do you want to be? It's like, I want to be a tech mogul. Okay, kid, relax. Not that you can't, but I'm trying to make you aware. I'm just trying to make you for a moment just ask yourself, wait a minute, what if the value system, my culture, or whatever the outer world is giving me is not accurate? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's right to start wars. I'm saying, what if our human perception so far on Earth is inaccurate? And doesn't this make the whole species want to roar like lions and explorers in regards to where everything must go? Do we just care for the little part of the world that we are, or do we care for what has invited us to update the system before we leave? How dare we forget the might of humanity as time pushes us forth? Do you understand? It's as if just because you don't see the war doesn't mean it's not happening. Do you understand? Just because you don't see the war, it doesn't mean it's not happening. Do you know what that means? That doesn't mean like aliens are fighting in our clouds. You know, it means that there is a greater game. And when you feel, when your soul gets goosebumps, do you know what I mean? That's when there is not even an articulation of courage, bravery, cowardice. It's like might calls upon might, and it just goes forth. So what I envision, regardless of how my mind shapes it every day, it is the legacy of the life force that was still a biological life form and marched into the future, not with cruelty, but with a compassion of advanced eyes that saw always further. You don't understand. The greatest, the most attractive quality, which is hilarious, right? And philosophers, I don't know how some of them missed it, but the most attractive quality, the thing that attracts us, is the potential of what can happen and what is there even in the unknown. Do you understand? That means they have duped you. They have put a box on your head, and the way they did it is they made you put it, because you had no choice but to integrate in whatever civilization was at that point. But we've reached an era where now ignorance is becoming heavy. This happens to you as you get older. You begin to feel the weight of ignorance. But it doesn't mean you should let yourself be just crushed by it. You must immediately assemble your greatest visions on this life. It's as if, do you know, it's bizarre. It's like, yo, man, are you an intellectual? And the person's like, I don't know. I just had, an intense moment where I shouted and commanded for the greatest visions to find me. And then in that moment, I saw the limitation of man. You think hell is just, do you understand? Like, you don't get it. Hell is failure. It doesn't matter where it happens, where you find it. But it's not, but let me tell you, if you stay in the failure and you loop, treat it, you can technically, a friend of mine used the term hell realm. But the whole point is, man has an ability that no other creature on this planet has. This is a hint. God's like, yo, can I give you a more obvious clue? And of course, God cannot be humanized. And I'm saying this playfully and respectfully. But really, what I'm saying is, what is the clue? The clue is that you have been given an ability to notice smaller beings like ants. And when you look at an ant, you're like, how do I explain who Napoleon Bonaparte was to this ant? You can't. It doesn't have access to the higher realm. But now you, as a human being who you think you're in the top of the food chain of the world of manifestation, when are you going to realize there will always be a higher and lower as long as you're simulated? And it's as if, regardless of how we see life, excuse me, regardless of how we see life, sorry guys, my attention is distracted right now for a moment. Let me gather my attention. Okay. The image, the guiding image for this lecture is, how would the most advanced version of you lead you? Okay? And whoever you are in this world, I want you to wonder about this, and you got to be conscious that there's two ways you wonder about this. What is your most advanced outer life? And what is your most advanced inner life? And then how is your inner life and outer life being just like how you have two eyes that see the moment? There is a mind and a body being found in the witnessing of the soul. Sorry, and the soul is witnessing your mind and body at the same time. Therefore, the soul cannot be have an attribute that's related to the body and mind. And because it doesn't have an attribute, it's Mysterian. And because it's Mysterian, it not because it's Mysterian, it is technically a secret of God. In the same way that game developers develop a game that you're not allowed to go and suddenly, like, you can't cheat in the game. You understand? Oh my God. It's the music, guys. The music is heavy. All right, let's go to C. Okay, this is great. I think this is good. All right, yes. This song is like, my soul can breathe for a moment. All right, folks, let's dive into the talk. I'm losing momentum here. Let's pick it back up. So, what is the idea? Okay, so how would the most advanced version of you lead you? All right. So far I kind of explained to you this scenario that you have an inner realm and you have an outer realm. And that when you look at life, you give meaning to things, and things are something on their own. And when you look at human beings, like you, at some point you'll wake up to the fact that you could never have defined them. That every person has an unknown potential to behave in unpredictable ways. And that's the cool thing, because it's the whole debate of whether you want to be in a world. My God. Guys, I'm drifting in this episode. How would the most advanced version of you lead you? If I'm asking this question from others, I definitely should have already asked myself that question. So to wonder about, like, even myself, how would the most advanced version of me lead me? Well, first I'd have to ask myself, how do I feel in my own presence? And do I feel comfortable with my own existence? Or do I feel uncomfortable with my existence? And then after I've acknowledged the outer self and outer world, I'm like, okay, how do I feel about my inner self and my inner world? Right? But then if I think about if my most advanced version would technically have the most advanced inner realm and the most advanced outer realm. All right, guys, the thing that was completely taking my attention outside of the car, just left. My full focus is here, hopefully. I don't know, guys. I don't know sometimes, we gotta accept we don't know what to say. In those moments, what do? You look at the chat section. Somebody says, my friend, are users and takers, I get rid of all of them this year. This is how I'm advancing. Any thoughts? Oh, no, sorry. My friend, are users and takers, I get rid of all of them this year. This is how I'm advancing. So I don't think that's the most advanced thing you can do. I think the most advanced thing in any scenario. Okay, first, thanks for that thing you wrote in the chat section. But the most advanced thing you can do is understand the situation. So if your friends are using you and taking things, that means you have a wrong impression of them. Do you know? So you need to understand them. You don't know who they are, that means, right? And this doesn't mean going there and trying to change them, but sometimes when you ask questions from human beings, right, they answer, right? So I would say it would be as if like, okay, why do you think this is the best approach? Do you know what I mean? And I'm trying to just get you to the sense of like try to understand the situation, because the whole point of life is that we shouldn't act like we're the judge of everything. Everybody's like, no, people aren't wearing robes and they don't have wooden hammers in their hand, but everybody's judging everything all the time. When they say don't judge me, it's like, excuse me, like how else are we going to analyze a situation? We have to judge its values, you know. So I would say try to understand, but if you see that there's ignorance, what does that mean? Okay, so in any relationship, if it's one-sided, it means it's only one person's reality is advancing. So that's technically kind of like you're a fictional character in the mind of someone who's using you. Do you know what I'm saying? So you have to make yourself real, right? Because human beings, I'm telling you, we have an inner life and outer life. And sometimes people, we can't say they're good and bad, but we don't know what patterns, what neural patterns they were exposed to. Do you know? I would say the most advanced thing you can do is try to understand why something is happening to you. And the most super advanced thing you can do is to figure out why the world is happening. It's like, yo, if I like, this is why I think if I was a professor at a university, you know, I would get complaints from the students. And like the dean or whatever would come and say, it's like, sir, it seems that the homework you're giving the students takes a lifetime to finish. I'm like, okay, kids, all right, students, for next class, I want you to think of the most advanced civilization you can fathom and come and talk about it. Do you know what I mean? And, kids are going to come there and be like, I don't know, I want a civilization that's just, from one aspect. Like, let me tell you what it is, okay? It's a system ultimately, and the system is beyond us. It's bigger than us. The forces of nature. That means even before there were political laws, like law was a kind of extension of natural law, right? People were like, like an apple fell on Isaac Newton's head, and instead of eating the apple, he fucking wrote an essay. Like that man was next level. Like we gotta honestly slow hand clap, okay, for that insect that kind of chewed like that thing that was holding the apple on the tree. Like that insect is the real hero. That real insect is the father of classical Newtonian physics, And can you imagine like history got it all wrong and Isaac Newton hated apples. Like, And it's like the dude didn't notice that for the first time from an apple falling on a tree. It's like leaves fall all the time every season. You know what I mean? It's like, yo, man, are you jumping? No, I'm falling down. Okay, so if okay, guys, I'm seeing you in the chat section. So you're saying if they're a group of narcissists, okay, like if you're around like a bunch of wild animals, so like get out of there so you don't get like clawed, okay? Do you know, or like buy medieval armor. Let me tell you this, a human being needs to, like, as a human being matures, they understand that it's okay to have a value as a being, which means it's okay to have boundaries as a being. And boundaries are kind of like, it's like your own honor. Everybody has their own honor, okay? And if they become dishonored past that limit, they go to this backup program of no longer giving a shit about who they're arguing with. But let me tell you this, you don't need it because if you went to like Sun Tzu, or some like ancient strategist, they would be like, buddy, what are you doing running away from your problems? Go and turn your problems into solutions. That means if your friends have used you, they owe you. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying like go and try to like tell them to do something, but I'm saying like go and explain to them the context because that's the issue, right? It's all about context, the frame. I'm sure people have heard this, like, framing the moment in a certain way, right? And what that means is like, how is the moment having values? And the human being that is able to clearly and simply see how the values of the moment start and build up, that person will, regardless of whether wanting to or not, have a confidence in reality, you know? So I'm saying that, for me, it's kind of like a mystery why any situation happens in any way at all. It's always fascinating to me, right? But I would say that what do you define a friend? See, your sentence said, my friends are using and taking from me and I want to get rid of them. So that sentence doesn't, like, it can't exist. Okay? And you gotta kind of be considerate of this too. Okay? One, people change. Two, I don't know, I think it was some Persian poet. He said that if you want a friend that is flawless, you will be friendless. So you can't expect perfectionism from people. You're like, yo, man, I'm gonna brand this person as a narcissist because they're not treating me properly. It's like, yo, what? Do you know what I mean? No, it's like that person is it's a behavioral psychology, which means they're a character in a story, but the way they valued in the story is not the way you value yourself personally. And unless you share this, how would they know? Do you know? For me, as the moment I heard the concept of win-win, I was like, what the F is win-lose then? Like, why was that ever, like, do you know what I mean? So the idea is try, and the most advanced response to the situation would be a response that advances you and them. But if you, for example, just disconnect, it doesn't advance them and they go on doing that to someone else. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's like you have to be a hero, but I'm just saying that human beings need to communicate reality, right? Anyways, guys, back to the talk, Um, I feel like the title calling me. So the notion of this is simply this idea, okay? That how would the most advanced version of us lead us? And honestly, guys, when I was writing the title, I also wanted to write like, what if you were your own commander? How would you command yourself? And I was like, okay, this isn't very interesting. That means I've had this desire to, in some sense, go and okay, think of it this way. If a person can control a vehicle, that's advanced, right? Now imagine if a person can control all vehicles, that's advanced, right? Do you know what I'm saying? And now imagine if everything was controlled to make everything better. How advanced would that be? Because the issue is they've created a culture, global culture in 2025 of self-worshippers. Okay? Everybody's worshiping themselves because they don't know what else to do. I'm being honest. And it's okay. We all need to survive in the external realms, so we still have to be a character in a story. This character in a story needs to have a value, so it needs to consider itself as its own ultimate value. But the thing is, that's not the most ideal approach. Because the question is not just, okay, it's just human being, the most advanced version of me. The most advanced version of you would also have the experience of a more advanced version of the world. Ultimately, guys, just to, you know, just finish up what I was saying for the chat section. Honestly, man, I really don't know because I don't know who they are and I don't know who you are. But I think that like just use this method where they say it's something they say in chess. They say, and it's it's way more difficult than it seems, but it's this idea that once you find a good, like, imagine you're playing chess and the opponent makes a chess move and immediately your mind sees a good move. The chess masters are saying, yo, relax. Once you find a good move, just pause, keep looking at the chessboard, and try to find a better move. And after you found the second better move, relax and repeat the same thing until you've seen a couple good moves. And then decide. So I'll tell you this. If this idea is just the first idea you have on how to handle your friends, then I would say don't act upon it yet. Try to find more angles and then act. Okay? I don't know. I hope that helped. But there's great advice. In the heart of mankind. Can you imagine if mankind ends up being cruel? We're like, that's so ironic. It's called mankind, but it's cruel as fuck. But we're not going to be cruel because evil, at some point of the being getting smarter, ends up being unnecessary destruction. Some things should not be disturbed. Do you know what I mean? In the same way that quantum physicists say, right, that, what is it, like, they asked this quantum physicist, hey, what are your experiments like? And he's like, buddy, it's like we took a jaguar from, like, its natural habitat, we put it in a cage, we're studying a cage jaguar and thinking this is what a jaguar is. So how would the most advanced version of you lead you? What right now I want you to imagine that there is a version of you that is completely emotionally feels different than who you are now, that looks at this world and does not fear it, but is fascinated by it. That means when fascination replaces fear, it is as if an eternal awakening, or I would say it's like beginning to understand how the system outlives its contents until it doesn't, and the system admin takes it all back. From one angle, sure, we're human beings, and the most advanced version of me is a human being also. Let's say let's okay, let's say, okay, a good question like somebody should ask. Sorry guys, my phone just said device overheating and I'm like, yo. If we ask how far advanced, how advanced? That, and then the question is also advanced in the world or advanced